On the orbital platform Viridia, drifting high above the storm-covered planet, Ilarian Lila stood alone at the curved observation window. Her arms folded tightly across her chest, her silver eyes fixed on the swirling clouds far below. Around her, the station hummed with quiet efficiency, lights blinking softly, panels glowing with streams of data. But she paid none of it any mind. Her thoughts were heavy tangled like old vines, and none of them led to peace. The marriage pact had been sealed 3 weeks ago, not by love, not by choice, but by cold necessity. The Ilari High Council, desperate to secure an alliance with Earth's United Stellar Alliance, had offered what they believed was their greatest bargaining chip, the last daughter of the Moon Wardens, Lila. She was not just any Ilari. She carried the bloodline of Star Singer's warriors who once walked the void without ships and spoke to dragons as equals. And she was bonded to Kyle, a young void dragon, whose scales shimmered like crushed nebulas and whose eyes held the depth of forgotten galaxies. But none of that mattered to the Council now. To them she was a symbol, a bridge, a tool, and tools did not get to say no. Lila turned from the window and walked slowly down the corridor, her boots making no sound on the polished floor. Kale followed close behind, curled loosely around her shoulders, his warm breath puffing gently against her neck. He sensed her unrest. Dragons always did. He let out a low rumble, more vibration than sound, a question without words. "I know," she murmured, not looking at him. "I know." She entered her quarters, a small but elegant space filled with relics from her childhood, star charts, woven tapestries, and a single obsidian flute that had belonged to her mother. She sat on the edge of the sleeping mat and stared at the wall where a projection of Earth floated softly, blue-green and fragile-looking. So unlike Ilarion with its violet skies and twin suns, Earth looked soft, temporary, like it could vanish with a single strong wind. Humans. She had studied them, of course. Their history, their wars, their art. They burned bright and fast like fireflies. They built empires only to tear them down. They loved fiercely and died young. To an Ilari who lived for centuries, such a life seemed almost tragic. And now she was expected to bind herself to one of them, to share a home, a name, a future with a being whose entire lifespan might be less than her next decade. The thought made her stomach twist. A soft chime announced an incoming transmission. She did not move. Kale lifted his head and hissed softly. The chime came again, more insistent. Finally, she sighed and waved her hand. The air shimmered and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It was Elder Malus, his face lined with age, his eyes sharp as flint. "Lila," he said without greeting, "the Alliance envoy has sent the final dossier. Your groom's profile is ready for review." She did not react. "I see, you will look at it. This is not a request, I am aware." His gaze softened just a fraction. "Lila, this union is vital. The Cathari threat grows. Without Earth's fleet, we cannot hold the Outer Rim. You know this, I know," she repeated flatly. He nodded once, and the projection vanished. The room fell silent again, except for Kale's steady breathing. After a long pause, she reached out and activated the file. A new hologram formed. Human male, name Daniel Cross, age 32. Rank Major. Service record attached. Commendations listed. Wounds sustained. Missions completed. She skimmed the words without interest until one line caught her eye. Siege of Ceres. Held position alone for 72 hours against Cathari swarm. Prevented collapse of Sector Gamma. Presumed dead. Recovered alive, her fingers stilled. 72 hours. Alone. Against the Cathari. Those creatures were nightmares made flesh. They devoured stars and left only silence. No Ilari would have survived that. Not without a full battle coven. And this human had done it alone. She zoomed in on the image. Daniel Cross stood in uniform, his face lean and weathered, his left arm ending just below the elbow replaced by a sleek prosthetic. His eyes were dark, tired, but not broken. There was something in them. Something that did not match the frantic energy she associated with humans. He looked still. Like a mountain after a storm. Kale nudged her shoulder gently. She blinked and realized she had been staring too long. "It means nothing," she told him aloud. "One brave human does not change what they are. They are still short-lived, impulsive, fragile." Kale tilted his head and made a soft clicking sound. Not a word, but a feeling. Curiosity. She closed the file and stood. "I will go through with the ceremony. For the Council. For our people. But after that, we leave. We find a quiet star and forget all of this." Kale rumbled in agreement, but his eyes stayed on the spot where the hologram had been. 2 days later, Lila boarded the shuttle that would take her to Earth. She wore no wedding robes. Instead, she donned her battle leathers woven from comet silk, strong enough to deflect plasma fire and light enough to move like shadow. Kale rode coiled around her shoulders, his wings tucked tight, his presence a silent promise. If things went wrong, they would not stay long. As the shuttle broke orbit and turned toward the distant blue dot, Lila watched Ilarion shrink behind her. She felt no sadness, only resolve. She would do her duty. She would stand beside this human. She would smile if required, and then she would disappear into the outer rim where no treaty could reach her. But deep down beneath the armor and the pride, a small, unfamiliar thought flickered. What if he is not like the others? She pushed it away. Humans were humans. Temporary. Loud. Doomed to fade. Yet as the stars stretched into lines and the shuttle plunged into the void, she found herself glancing once more at the empty space where his image had been. Just once. Just for a second. Kale pressed closer as if sensing the shift in her thoughts. She did not pull away. The transport vessel shuddered violently as it approached lunar base. Alpha Lyra gripped the safety harness tighter as warning lights flashed throughout the cabin. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Ambassador, the pilot called out, her voice tight. With controlled panic, we have a critical systems failure. Navigation and stabilization are offline emergency protocols. Activated, Azar growled from his position on Lyra's shoulder, his small form vibrating with tension. His scales flashed bright orange. A sign of his distress, Lyra reached up to steady him. What happened, she demanded, unknown ambassador. The pilot responded, working frantically at the controls. The systems were functioning perfectly during pre-flight checks. This is not a mechanical failure. This is deliberate sabotage, the Nexus, Lyra thought immediately. They had acted faster than anticipated. Can we abort and return to the main vessel? Lyra asked. Negative, ambassador. The pilot replied. The main vessel is already returning to Viridian space. As per protocol, when the diplomatic contingent departs, we are committed to landing. And Lunar Base Alpha is aware of our situation. They are dispatching an emergency response team. The transport lurched again, throwing Lyra against her restraints. Azar dug his claws into her ceremonial garment to avoid being thrown off. She could see the lunar surface approaching too quickly through the viewport. The white, dusty ground and gray craters growing larger with alarming speed. Ambassador, the security chief approached, moving carefully through the unstable cabin. You must prepare for emergency evacuation. We cannot be certain this is not an assassination attempt. Lyra nodded. Understood. The transport rocked violently again as the pilot fought for. Control fire suddenly erupted from a control panel near the rear of the cabin. One of the security team immediately moved to extinguish it. Lunar Base Alpha to Viridian transport. A human voice crackled over the communication system. This is Lieutenant Olivia Winters leading emergency response. We see your approach vector is compromised. Prepare for emergency landing assistance. We will deploy stabilizing tethers as you enter range. The pilot's hands flew over the remaining functional controls. Acknowledged. Lieutenant Winters, we are experiencing catastrophic system failure. Possible sabotage. Ambassador Lyra is aboard Lunar Base. Alpha, understood, the human woman responded. We are implementing diplomatic protection protocols. Stand by for tether deployment. Lyra, watch through the viewport as they approached the lunar base. Several small vessels launched from a docking bay, moving quickly to intercept their failing transport. Ambassador. The pilot called, prepare for impact. In approximately 30 seconds, Lyra tightened her harness and Azar transformed, growing slightly larger and wrapping himself protectively around her shoulders. His scales hardened, creating a natural armor. The transport shook violently as magnetic tethers connected with loud clangs against the hull. The sudden deceleration threw everyone forward against their restraints. We have you, Viridian transport. The human lieutenant's voice came through the communication system. We will guide you to emergency landing pad. 3. Maintain minimum thruster control if possible. Somehow the pilot managed to engage the remaining functional thrusters, slowing their descent further. The combined efforts of the human rescue vessels and the transport's failing systems brought them toward a large illuminated landing pad. Brace for impact. The pilot shouted. The transport hit the landing pad hard, skidding across its surface before coming to a violent stop. Lyra felt Azar's protective embrace tighten as they were thrown forward. Metal groaned, and alarms blared throughout the cabin. Emergency lights cast everything in a pulsing red glow. Are you injured? Ambassador, the security chief asked immediately at her side. Lyra did a quick assessment. I am unharmed, she replied. Azar slowly unwrapped himself from around her, returning to his smaller form, though his scales still glowed bright orange with agitation. A new alarm suddenly sounded. Fire in the rear compartment, the pilot announced. We must evacuate immediately. The security team moved, with practiced efficiency, creating a protective formation around Lyra as they headed toward the exit hatch. But as they approached the door to the rear cargo area, a wall of flame blocked their path. Ambassador, the security chief said, we must use the emergency hatch. The side hatch was designed for spacewalks, not dignified diplomatic arrivals. But that hardly mattered now. Lyra nodded her agreement, and they changed direction. Wait. Lyra suddenly stopped. Where is Azar? The small dragon had been on her shoulder moments ago, but in the confusion of the hard landing and evacuation, he was no longer there. Azar, she called, scanning the smoke-filled cabin. A small, distressed chirp came from the direction of the cargo area. Beyond the wall of flames, Lyra immediately moved toward the sound, but her security detail blocked her. Ambassador, we cannot risk your safety, the chief stated firmly. We will send a team member before anyone could act. The main hatch of the transport burst open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. A figure in an environmental suit rushed in. This is Lieutenant Winters from Lunar Base Alpha, the figure announced through external speakers. We need to evacuate immediately. This vessel may explode. Ambassador Lyra of Viridia. The security chief identified. We have a situation. Our diplomatic cargo is trapped in the rear compartment. Lyra pushed past her security. Is anyone else aboard, Lieutenant? The human scanned the cabin. Only the 8 of you that we detected on approach. No, Lyra insisted. My companion Azar is trapped. Lieutenant Winters tilted her helmeted head. Your companion. Did our sensors not detect them? He is a plasma dragon. Lyra explained quickly. He would not register on your lifeform scanners. His energy signature would appear as a power source. Another distressed chirp came from the cargo area. This one weaker, I must retrieve him. Lyra insisted, attempting to move toward the flames again. Ambassador, the security chief blocked her path. This is precisely what an assassin would want to separate you from protection. Lieutenant Winters seemed to assess the situation quickly. How large is this companion? In his current form, no larger than your Earth feline. Lyra replied, but he cannot maintain it much longer. If he is injured or frightened, he may expand to combat size, which would be catastrophic in this damaged vessel. Without hesitation, the human lieutenant moved toward the flaming doorway. I will retrieve him. Ambassador, you must evacuate with your team immediately. Before anyone could object, Lieutenant Winters activated some kind of fire suppression system in her suit, creating a temporary path through the flames, and disappeared into the cargo area. Ambassador, we must leave now. The security chief insisted. Lyra hesitated, torn between protocol and concern for Azar. The dragon had been her companion for over 15 years. Their bond was sacred among her people. The transport groaned ominously around them. Ambassador, the pilot called from the hatch. Lunar Base emergency. Teams report the fuel cells are becoming unstable. We have less than 2 minutes before potential detonation. Another cry from Azar, this one clearly in pain, decided the matter for Lyra. Evacuate. She commanded her team. I will retrieve Azar with the lieutenant's assistance. The security chief looked ready to physically remove her from the transport, but Lyra fixed her with the commanding stare that had cowed council elders. That is an order. Chief, reluctantly, the security team moved toward the hatch while Lyra turned toward the cargo area. The flames had already regrown, consuming the doorway again. She could not pass without protection. A sudden explosion from within the cargo area threw her backward. She hit the cabin wall hard as smoke billowed out into the main cabin. Lieutenant. She called out Azar. For several terrible seconds there was no response. Then through the smoke emerged Lieutenant Winters. Her environmental suit was scorched in several places. One arm appeared to be moving, unnaturally. But clutched against her chest with her good arm was a small, writhing form. Lyra rushed forward as the lieutenant stumbled. "Got him," the human gasped through her external speakers. "But we need to leave now together." They moved toward the exit hatch where the security team waited impatiently outside on the landing pad. As soon as they emerged, the emergency teams rushed them away from the damaged transport. They had barely reached a safe distance when the vessel exploded behind them. The concussive force threw them forward despite the moon's low gravity. Emergency teams immediately surrounded them, erecting a temporary shield barrier against the debris. Lyra found herself on the ground, beside Lieutenant Winters. The human was removing, her damaged helmet revealing a face flushed with exertion. Short auburn hair matted with sweat-framed features that showed strain, but also determination. "Azar," Lyra called, looking for her companion. "In here," the lieutenant said gently, opening a compartment. On her suit. The small dragon emerged, looking terrified but largely unharmed. He immediately leapt to Lyra, chirping frantically and nuzzling against her neck. "You saved him," Lyra said to the human, looking at her with new eyes. "Why would you risk yourself?" For him, Lieutenant Winters winced as medics began examining her injured arm. "I would do the same for any being, Ambassador. My job is to protect all life, not just human life." Lyra stared at the human woman processing this unexpected response. Such sentiment was rare even among her own people, where duty to one's own kind typically superseded all other concerns. Ambassador Lyra, a new human, approached wearing the uniform of Lunar Base Alpha Command. "I am Base Commander Ellis. We deeply regret this incident. An investigation is already underway to determine how your transport was compromised." Lyra stood with as much dignity as she could muster, given the lunar day cycle was considerably longer than what Lyra was accustomed to, but after a week at Lunar Base Alpha, she had adjusted to the rhythm. Living in the artificial environment of the diplomatic quarters, she found herself increasingly curious about Earth and its inhabitants, especially since Lieutenant Winters began her cultural orientation sessions. Azar had taken to the lieutenant with unusual enthusiasm. The small dragon would chirp excitedly whenever she arrived for their daily meetings. Something about the human woman resonated with the normally suspicious creature. Lyra found this development both puzzling and intriguing. Today, Lieutenant Winters was explaining human leisure activities when the diplomatic quarters communication system chimed. "Ambassador Lyra," Commander Ellis' voice announced. "Commander Harper has returned to Lunar Base Alpha. He requests to meet with you at your earliest convenience." Lyra felt a sudden tightness in her chest. The moment she had been both dreading and anticipating had arrived. She looked at Lieutenant Winters, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Please inform Commander Harper." "I will receive him in 1 hour," Lyra responded. "Very well," Ambassador Commander Ellis replied. "He will arrive at 1400 hours. Communication ended and Lyra turned to Lieutenant Winters. "Is my appearance appropriate for this meeting?" she asked. The lieutenant looked her over with a critical eye. The traditional Viridian diplomatic garment Lyra wore shimmered with subtle energy, patterns in various shades of blue and silver. Her silver hair was arranged in the formal style of her people, with crystalline ornaments marking her rank. "You look perfect, Ambassador," Lieutenant Winters assured her. "Though I should warn you, Commander, Harper is usually quite direct. He may not observe all the formal diplomatic protocols you're accustomed to." Lyra frowned. This was concerning. How am I to interpret such behavior? Disrespect. Disinterest. Neither, Lieutenant Winters replied quickly. Commander Harper is simply focused on efficiency. He believes in getting to the heart of matters without excessive ceremony. It's actually one of his strengths as a commander. Lyra considered this. Even her brief time with humans had shown her they were less concerned with ritual than Viridian still. To approach such an important meeting without proper ceremony seemed careless. "Lieutenant, would you remain for this initial meeting?" she asked. "It would be helpful to have someone familiar with both cultures present." Lieutenant Winters looked surprised but nodded. "Of course, Ambassador. If you think it would help." The hour passed quickly as Lyra reviewed her mental preparations for this crucial first encounter. The security detail performed additional sweeps of the diplomatic quarters, ensuring no listening devices or other threats had been planted. The Nexus' attempt to sabotage her arrival had made everyone more vigilant. Precisely at the designated time the door chimed, Commander Jack Harper had arrived. Lyra positioned herself formally in the center of the receiving area. With Azar perched regally on her shoulder, Lieutenant Winters stood discreetly to one side. The security detail verified the commander's identity, then allowed him to enter. The man who walked through the door was not what Lyra expected, though she had studied his images extensively. Seeing Commander Harper in person was different. He was taller than she anticipated, with a physical presence that immediately commanded attention. He wore a crisp Space Force uniform with command insignia and several decoration pins. His dark hair was cut in the military style, short and practical. His face showed signs of recent stress with slight shadows under his eyes. "Ambassador, Lyra," he said with a formal bow, "I apologize for not being present upon your arrival. A critical situation required my immediate attention." His voice was deeper than in the communication recordings, more resonant. Lyra noticed he maintained direct eye contact, a practice considered somewhat aggressive in Viridian culture but which she had learned was expected in human diplomatic exchanges. "Commander Harper," she acknowledged with a slight inclination of her head, "your absence was noted. However, Lieutenant Winters has been an excellent representative of Earth during this time." The commander glanced at Lieutenant Winters with what appeared to be approval. "Good. I selected Olivia myself. She has a knack for interspecies communication." Lieutenant Winters shifted slightly clearly. Uncomfortable with the praise, Lyra began the formal Viridian greeting ceremony. "I bring the light of Viridia to Earth. May our stars shine in harmony." She waited for the traditional response, but instead, Commander Harper stepped forward. "Ambassador, I believe we should speak plainly. There are urgent matters regarding our arrangement that require immediate discussion." Lyra blinked, surprised by this abrupt deviation from protocol. Lieutenant Winters had warned her about the commander's directness, but this was beyond what she had anticipated. "Commander Harper," she said stiffly, "there are proper ways to begin such important negotiations." Harper nodded. "I understand the importance of ceremony to your people, Ambassador, but we have received intelligence that Nexus forces are moving more rapidly than previously estimated. They will reach the outer Viridian colony of Neria within 3 Earth weeks, not 2 months as initially projected." This information landed like a physical blow. Lyra felt Azar tense on her shoulder, his scales flashing with sudden heat. 3 weeks. The timeline had accelerated dramatically. "Is this information verified?" she asked, all thought of ceremony forgotten. The commander nodded grimly. "Our deep space monitoring stations confirmed it yesterday. That was the mission I was recalled for. We sent a stealth reconnaissance vessel to the Neria system. The Nexus fleet has increased velocity. Their new drive technology is more advanced than our intelligence suggested." Lyra processed this disturbing news. "The Council must be informed immediately." "Already done," Commander Harper said. "I sent the data to your Council as soon as we confirmed it. But this development affects our timeline as well. The diplomatic marriage needs to happen sooner than planned." Lyra felt a surge of resistance. The original timeline had already seemed rushed. Now he suggested accelerating it further. "How soon?" she asked carefully. "Within 3 days. Commander Harper," replied, "our analysts believe the Nexus will attempt to prevent our alliance by any means necessary. The sooner we formalize our union, the sooner we can deploy joint defensive forces to the Viridian system." 3 days. Lyra thought with dismay. Not even enough time for the most basic ceremonial preparations. Commander Lyra said, "I understand the strategic necessity, but proper Viridian marriage ceremonies require at minimum 7 days of preparation. The ritual purification alone takes 3 days." Commander Harper frowned. "Those are luxury time frames, Ambassador. We are facing an existential threat to both our peoples. The Nexus will not wait while we perform ceremonies." His bluntness bordered on rudeness by Viridian standards. Lyra felt her temper rising despite her diplomatic training. Azar sensed her mood and growled softly at the commander. Lieutenant Winters interjected, "Perhaps we could find a compromise." a modified ceremony that respects Viridian traditions while acknowledging the urgency of the situation. Harper looked at his subordinate, then back to Lyra. What would be the absolute minimum ceremonial requirements that would still be recognized as legitimate by your council? Lyra considered this carefully. The core ritual, the binding of spirits, required only 1 full day of preparation. The council would accept it as valid, though it would be seen as extremely unusual, perhaps even desperate. That in itself might communicate the severity of the situation. The FI essential ceremony could be completed in 2 Earth days, she conceded. It would be unprecedented, but valid. Relief crossed Harper's face. Excellent. Then we can proceed immediately with preparations. The ceremony will take place in 2 days. That still gives us a day to deploy before the Nexus reaches detection range of our joint operations. Lyra felt overwhelmed by the commander's efficiency. It left no room for adjustment or reflection. This was not how she had imagined her marriage arrangement would proceed. Even as a diplomatic necessity, it deserved more consideration. Commander Harper, she began. I appreciate the strategic implications, but a loud alarm suddenly blared throughout the base, cutting off her words. Red emergency lights began flashing in the corridors outside. Security breach announced the base communication system. All personnel to emergency stations. Possible hostile infiltration detected in Sector 7. Commander Harper immediately activated his communication device. Control room report, he demanded. Commander Ellis' voice responded. Sensors detected an unauthorized energy signature in the science wing. Initial analysis suggests Nexus technology. We have deployed security teams. Harper turned to Lyra. Ambassador, we need to move you to a secure location immediately. This may be an attempt to target you. Lyra felt Azar leap from her shoulder, transforming as he did so. The small dragon expanded rapidly, reaching the size of a large earth canine. His scales hardened, forming armor plates, and the energy pulses beneath them intensified. The security detail moved into protective formation around Lyra, weapons drawn. Commander Harper, I am trained in combat. The chief of security stated. We will escort the ambassador to the emergency bunker. Harper nodded but drew his own sidearm. I will accompany you, he said in a tone that allowed no argument. Lieutenant Winters, secure the diplomatic communications, ensure the Viridian Council can be reached. Lieutenant Winters acknowledged the order and moved quickly to a control panel, while Lyra found herself surrounded by both Viridian and. The secure facility chosen for the ceremony was a converted conference center in the heart of the lunar base. Behind multiple security checkpoints with both human and Viridian guards positioned throughout the area, it represented the best protection. Available. Lyra stood in a preparation chamber adjacent to the main hall, where in less than an hour she would be bound to Commander Jack Harper in marriage. Lieutenant Winters helped arrange the ceremonial garments, a compromise between Viridian tradition and the rushed timeline. The lieutenant had somehow managed to acquire crystalline decorations that approximated those used in traditional Viridian ceremonies. The effect was not perfect, but Lyra appreciated the effort. How are you feeling? Ambassador Winters asked as she carefully placed the final ornament in Lyra's silver hair. Lyra considered the question. Her emotions were complex, a mixture of resignation, determination, and unexpected curiosity about the human commander who would soon be her husband. I am focused on my duty, Lieutenant, she replied honestly. The alliance must proceed. Winters smiled gently. Most brides on Earth might mention other emotions too. Excitement, perhaps. Or nervousness. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Is that what? I am a bride. That word seems inadequate for a diplomatic representative forging an interspecies alliance. The lieutenant laughed softly. Well, technically, yes. That's exactly what you are. Though I suppose most Earth brides aren't simultaneously preventing. Interstellar Warazar chirped from his position on a nearby surface, where he had been watching the preparations with interest. The dragon had been unusually calm today, as if sensing the importance of the occasion. His scales gleamed with a soft, blue glow indicating contentment. There was a gentle knock at the door. Lieutenant Winters opened it, revealing Commander Ellis. Ambassador, he said with a formal bow. Commander Harper is ready. The Viridian Council representatives have established communication. Link, they will witness the ceremony. Virtually, Lyra nodded. This was another compromise. The council elders could not attend in person due to the accelerated timeline, but would observe via secure transmission eyes. Their news of the Nexus infiltrator? She asked. Commander Ellis nodded grimly. We have confirmed there were 3 agents, not 1. They used some kind of phase technology to bypass our security systems. 2 were neutralized, but 1 escaped. We believe they had help from someone inside. The base Lyra frowned. This confirmed their worst fears. The Nexus had indeed penetrated Earth security. Have you identified the collaborator? Not yet, Commander Ellis admitted. But we have narrowed the possibilities. Security protocols have been enhanced. Again, I apologize for these circumstances, Ambassador. This is hardly the wedding day anyone would wish for. Lyra straightened her shoulders. Do not concern yourself, Commander. The ceremony itself is secondary to the alliance it represents. Commander. Ellis nodded, then departed, leaving Lyra with Lieutenant Winters once more. The lieutenant made final adjustments to Lyra's ceremonial garment. It truly is beautiful, she said softly. Not what you would have had on Viridia. I know, but it is acceptable, Lyra assured her. The symbolism matters more than the specific materials. She hesitated, then added, You have been most helpful, Lieutenant Winters. I am grateful for your assistance during this difficult time. Winters smiled. The honor has been mine, Ambassador, and she paused. You know, you could call me Olivia now. We're not exactly standing on ceremony anymore. Lyra considered this small gesture of familiarity among humans. It would be unusual for a Viridian of her rank to address a military officer by first name. But perhaps that too was part of the cultural bridge she needed to build. Very well, Olivia, she said. Testing the name, I am Lyra, though I suspect Commander Harper will continue to address me as Ambassador. Olivia grinned. He will until you tell him not to. Jack is formal that way, but he respects boundaries. Another knock at the door indicated it was time. Lyra took a deep breath and gestured for Azar, who immediately leapt to her shoulder, taking his ceremonial position. The main hall had been transformed as much as possible to approximate a Viridian binding ceremony. Crystal formations brought from her ship were positioned around a central platform, creating the proper energy alignment. Points of light hovered in the air. A human technology that simulated the floating luminescence of Viridian sacred spaces. The effect was a strange hybrid of both worlds. Much like the union it would formalize. Commander Harper stood on the platform wearing his formal Space Force uniform with additional ceremonial insignia. His posture was perfect, his expression solemn. He showed no signs of the injury from the previous day, though Lyra suspected the leg still pained him. As she approached, she studied him more carefully than she had been, able to during their brief chaotic first meeting. He was undeniably handsome by human standards, with strong features and intelligent eyes. He carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to command, but without arrogance. There was a steadiness to him that Lyra found herself appreciating. When she reached the platform, he bowed formally. Ambassador Lyra, you honor us with your presence. She inclined her head in response. Commander Harper, I come in the spirit of alliance. A large display screen showed the Viridian Council elders observing from their chamber. The eldest spoke, Ambassador. The Council recognizes this modified ceremony as valid given the extraordinary circumstances. May your binding bring strength to both our peoples. Similar screen showed Earth government officials, including the Secretary General of the United Alliance of Nations. The human leader echoed similar sentiments, though with less ceremony and more direct language about mutual defense and cooperation. ERD, Efficient, a senior diplomat who had been hastily authorized to perform both Earth and Viridian ceremonies, stepped forward. We gather today to witness the binding of Ambassador Lyra of Viridia and Commander Jack Harper of Earth in matrimony. And alliance, she began. This union represents not merely the joining of 2 individuals, but of 2 worlds, 2 species united in common purpose against a shared threat. The ceremony proceeded with elements from both cultures. The exchange of vows was simple, direct, focusing on the commitment to the alliance rather than personal devotion. The human tradition of ring exchange was modified with crystalline bands that had been quickly fabricated from viridian materials. When it came time for the viridian energy binding, Azar played his role. The dragon expanded slightly larger than his travel size and generated a field of plasma energy that surrounded both Lyra and Commander Harper, connecting them briefly in a shared aura. The humans present gasped at the display, never having witnessed such phenomenon. Throughout the ceremony, Commander Harper maintained his formal demeanor, but Lyra noticed small details: his gentle handling of the crystal band as he placed it on her finger, the respectful way he addressed her during the vows, the genuine look of wonder when Azar's energy field connected them. When the officiant finally pronounced them bound by the laws and customs of both Earth and Viridia, Lyra felt a strange sense of completion. The deed was done. The alliance formalized. She was now, by all legal definitions, married to this human commander. There was polite applause from the gathered witnesses, most of whom were military or diplomatic personnel. The Viridian Council elders gave their formal blessing, and the transmission ended. The Earth officials likewise offered congratulations before their screen went dark. Commander Harper turned to her ambassador. He said quietly, "May I speak with you privately?" She nodded, and they moved to a small antechamber, while security personnel established a perimeter outside. Azar remained on her shoulder, watching the commander with intelligent eyes. Once alone, Harper seemed to relax slightly, his posture becoming less rigid. "Ambassador," he began, "I want to assure you that I understand the diplomatic nature of our arrangement. I have quarters prepared for you aboard the destroyer that will transport us to Earth. They are separate from mine. I will not presume upon any personal." Lyra raised a hand, stopping him. "You need not be concerned, Commander. I am well versed in diplomatic protocols. This binding is political, not personal." He nodded, seeming relieved. "I just wanted to be clear. I respect you and your position. This alliance is too important to complicate with misunderstandings." Lyra found herself appreciating his directness. It was refreshing after the layers of formality she was accustomed to in Viridian diplomatic circles. "May I ask you something, Commander?" she said. "Of course. Why did you agree to this arrangement? You are clearly a respected officer with significant responsibilities. What benefit did you see in binding yourself to an alien diplomat?" Harper considered her question seriously. For a moment his formal facade slipped, revealing a more contemplative person. "Beneath, 2 reasons, Ambassador." He finally said, "First, and most obviously, Duty Earth needs this alliance as much as Viridia does. The Nexus threat is real and growing. Our analysts predict they will reach Earth space within a year after conquering Viridia. Our best chance for survival is united defense." And the second reason she prompted when he paused. A slight smile touched his lips. "The second is more personal. I believe in building bridges, not walls. When the Alliance proposed this diplomatic marriage, I saw an opportunity to create something unprecedented. A true partnership between species, each with our own strengths and perspectives. I believe we are stronger together than apart, that some differences can become advantages when properly aligned." Lyra studied him. The answer was unexpectedly philosophical for someone she had categorized as primarily a tactical thinker. There was more depth. The Phoenix shuddered as it executed the tight maneuver around Europa. Lyra gripped the tactical console to maintain her balance as the massive destroyer fought against the gravitational forces. Jack stood beside her, his expression focused as he monitored the pursuing Nexus vessel, executing radiation shield protocols now. Captain Reed announced the crew worked with practiced efficiency, adjusting the ship systems to protect against the intense radiation belt surrounding the Jovian moon. Jack leaned closer to Lyra, speaking quietly so only she could hear. "This is going to be close." She nodded. The tactical display showed the Nexus vessel adjusting its course, attempting to predict their maneuver. "They are highly adaptive," she observed. "Their tactical systems learn rapidly. Commander Harper, we've got another problem." The sensor officer called out. "The Nexus ship is deploying smaller vessels. Intercept craft." Jack moved swiftly to the sensor station. "How many?" "3, sir. Fast attack configuration. They can outmaneuver us even if the main vessel cannot." Captain Reed joined them. "The primary ship remains on intercept trajectory." These smaller craft appeared to be attempting to box us in. Lyra studied the tactical display with growing concern. The Nexus was employing a classic entrapment strategy, one her people had encountered before. They would use the smaller vessels to herd the Phoenix into a predetermined engagement zone, where the main vessel could bring its superior weaponry to bear. Jack seemed to reach the same conclusion. They don't want to destroy us, he said. They want to force us to surrender with minimal damage to their prize. The destroyer rocked slightly as its course adjustment completed, moving them into Europa's shadow. Radiation levels spiked momentarily before the shields compensated. Energy signature dampened to minimum levels. The engineering officer reported, "We are running as silent as possible while maintaining essential systems." On the tactical display, the Nexus pursuit vessels showed signs of confusion. Their trajectories became less certain as they searched for the Phoenix. "It worked," Jack said with cautious optimism. "They lost our clear signature, but they know we're here somewhere. They will establish a search pattern. How long can we maintain this stealth profile?" Lyra asked. 20 minutes maximum before system degradation becomes critical," the engineer replied. "The radiation exposure is taxing our shields." Jack nodded to Captain Reed. "Deploy the countermeasures as planned, aye, sir." The captain turned to her weapons officer. "Deploy packages Alpha and Beta precisely as programmed." Lyra watched as 2 small objects were released from the Phoenix. They drifted away on minimal thrust, their energy signatures carefully calibrated. Jack turned to her. "We developed these based on intelligence about Nexus targeting systems," he explained. "Each package emits an energy signature similar to our ship, but slightly distorted. If we're lucky, they will pursue these decoys long enough for us to slip past their perimeter." It was a clever strategy, Lyra had to admit. The Viridian approach would have been more direct, relying on superior firepower rather than deception. This adaptive thinking was precisely what made humans unpredictable allies and dangerous enemies. The bridge crew watched in tense silence as the Nexus vessels detected the decoys. On the tactical display, 2 of the smaller craft diverted to investigate, each taking a different target. The main vessel maintained its search pattern, however clearly more sophisticated in its sensor capabilities. "One of the decoys has been destroyed," the sensor officer announced. They recognized it as a countermeasure, and the second Captain Reed asked, "Still being pursued by 1 interceptor?" The officer paused. "Correction. The second interceptor is returning to search pattern." Jack frowned. "We're running out of time. How long until we clear the radiation field?" 7 minutes. "Sir," navigation reported. "The Earth defense perimeter is still 40 minutes beyond that at maximum speed." Lyra studied the tactical situation. Then she turned to Jack. "I have a suggestion," she said. "Commander Azar may be able to help." Jack raised an eyebrow. "How plasma dragons can generate energy fields that mask other energy signatures," she explained. "It's how they hunt in the wild. If Azar expands to full size, he could potentially create a camouflage envelope around the Phoenix long enough for us to slip past their search pattern." Captain Reed looked skeptical. "Can a single creature, regardless of its abilities, mask a destroyer class?" Vessel Azar, who had remained in his smaller form on Lyra's shoulder, chirped indignantly, his scales flashing with energy pulses. Jack considered the suggestion. How long could he maintain such a field? Lyra consulted silently with Azar through their bond. "Perhaps 15 minutes, she answered. "But it would require him to access the ship's power systems to amplify his natural abilities." Jack didn't hesitate. "Engineering. Prepare to interface with Ambassador Lyra's companion. According to her specifications, Captain set course for the narrowest point between search vessels as soon as the Dragon's field is established." Captain Reed gave the orders, though her expression showed lingering doubt. The engineering team quickly rigged a connection point where Azar could link with the ship's energy grid. Lyra placed Azar on the specially prepared interface panel. The Dragon expanded gradually, growing from his cat-sized form to the dimensions of a small shuttle. His body elongated, becoming more serpentine, his scales brightening with internal energy. When he reached full size, he wrapped partially around the central power conduit, his scales merging with the ship's systems. The effect was immediate. The Phoenix energy signature began to shift and distort, becoming almost unrecognizable. The sensor readings showed confusion from the Nexus vessels as they lost their tenuous lock on the destroyer. Navigator, take us through their perimeter. Jack ordered maximum stealth speed. The Phoenix moved slowly but steadily through the gap in the Nexus search pattern. The main view screen showed the massive Nexus vessel passing less than 5 kilometers away. Its ominous form briefly visible before disappearing into the darkness of space again. Bridge crew maintained total silence as they executed the dangerous maneuver. Lyra could feel Azar's strain through their bond. The Dragon was channeling enormous energy, maintaining the camouflage field while interfacing with alien technology. She placed a hand on his flank, offering support through their connection. Minutes stretched with excruciating slowness. The tactical display showed them gradually moving beyond the search perimeter. Each passing moment increased their chance of escape, but Azar was weakening his scales, dulling as he depleted his internal reserves. He cannot maintain the field much longer, Lyra warned quietly. We're almost clear, Jack responded. Just 2 more minutes. The Phoenix continued its careful trajectory, navigating between the search patterns of the Nexus vessels. The main ship had begun to expand its search, clearly suspicious that their quarry had somehow slipped past them. Suddenly alarms blared throughout the bridge. Red warning lights flashed. Power surge in main engineering. The engineering officer called out, "The Dragon's energy field is creating feedback in our systems." Azar roared in pain as electrical discharges coursed along his body. Lyra rushed to him, placing herself between the Dragon and the power coupling. Jack was immediately beside her. "Ambassador, stand back." "No," she replied firmly, placing her hands on Azar despite the energy discharges that now burned her skin. "He needs me to stabilize the connection." Jack hesitated only a moment before joining her. "What can I do?" he asked. "Place your hands here," she directed, guiding him to a specific point on Azar's flank. The Dragon growled but did not resist as Jack followed her instructions. Together they created an energy circuit, Lyra using her natural Viridian biological conductivity, Jack providing a secondary path for the overflow. The engineering team worked frantically to adjust the ship systems to accommodate the fluctuating energy patterns. Lyra felt Azar's pain through their bond, but also his determination. The Dragon would not fail them, even at cost to himself. "We're clear," the navigator finally announced. "We've passed their search perimeter." No signs of pursuit. Jack looked to Captain Reed. "Maintain current course and speed. Keep the energy dampening measures active until we're certain they haven't detected us." "Aye, Commander." Lyra gently disconnected Azar from the ship systems. The Dragon immediately contracted, collapsing into a much smaller form, exhausted by the effort. She gathered him carefully in her arms. His scales were dull, almost gray, rather than their usual vibrant blue. "Will he recover?" Jack asked, his voice showing genuine concern. She nodded. "But I must take him to my quarters immediately. He needs rest and specialized care." Jack turned to Captain Reed. "You have the bridge." "Captain, maintain course for Earth. I will accompany the ambassador." Together they left the bridge crew, who regarded them with new respect, especially Azar. The Dragon had potentially saved them all from capture or worse. In Lyra's quarters, Jack helped prepare a recuperation space for Azar, using specifications Lyra provided. The Dragon required specific energy frequencies and environmental conditions to recover properly. As she tended to her companion, Jack observed quietly, "I have never seen anything like that. The bond between you is remarkable." Lyra looked up from where she was carefully monitoring Azar's recovery. "Plasma. Dragons choose their companions for life," she explained. "The connection goes beyond simple loyalty. It is a sharing of essence. Each strengthens the other. He risked himself to protect us both." Today Jack knelt beside the recuperation platform where Azar rested. "Thank you," he said directly to the Dragon. "I am in your debt." To Lyra's surprise, Azar stirred and extended a weak tendril of plasma.